Welcome to Dark Horizon Creations. I'm Mike. Tonight, I've got a special video for all of you fans of the G.I Joe Classified Series. I'm going to give you a first look at my custom Covergirl action figure that I recently completed. Now, if you hadn't already, please follow, like, and subscribe to my social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get a notification of when I post new content. Covergirl has always been one of my favorite characters within the G.I Joe franchise, but I always felt she was underutilized. You know, more often than not in the cartoons and the comics, we see her driving the Wolverine or something like that. I always felt she should be out in the field, you know, part of a small four-man team conducting reconnaissance or hostage rescue or something of that nature. And that's part of the inspiration for doing this action figure. Now, if you're watching this video and you don't know anything about Covergirl or who she is, she had her first appearance in G.I Joe, A Real American Hero, issue number 16. That was released in October of 1983. Her file name is Courtney A. Krieger. She was born in Peoria, Illinois. Her rank is E5 Sergeant. Her primary MOS is 19 Zulu. She's a senior NCO armor crewman. Her secondary MOS is 35 Lima Counterintelligence. That's the same as Scarlet. Now, Courtney is a former fashion and glamour model, and that's where she got her start before she enlisted in the U.S. Army. And we get a glimpse of that in G.I. Joe Renegades. It's very brief, but when the team is talking to Shipwreck, on the wall behind him is a pinup poster of Covergirl that's autographed for Shipwreck, and it was included there in that moment to sort of allude to her being included in the series at a later time, which of course didn't happen, but I always thought that was really cool. So when I set out to do this action figure, I knew I wanted to attempt a Classified Series Covergirl, but I didn't know where to start. So like a lot of customizers, I went online, you know, just started Googling Classified Series Covergirl to see if anyone else had attempted it. I saw, you know, several. Probably the best one out there that I saw was by an individual who I don't know their name or even the website that the figure was on. But it was based on the Lady Jaye Classified Series body with a Captain Marvel bomber jacket and arms, as well as the Sue Storm head sculpt from the Fantastic Four action figure. I really liked the head sculpt, but I didn't like the fact that she had long hair. I also didn't care for the bomber jacket because it looked good on the figure, but it was unrealistic. And, you know, I didn't want to copy someone else's design or inspiration. You know, I didn't want to make a figure identical to someone else. I wanted an action figure that looked realistic, you know, that was similar to what we see female members of the Special Operations Unit wearing in the real world. So I started looking for reference photos of female Special Operations members in the Civil Affairs units and psychological warfare, things like that, as well as looking at reference photos of female law enforcement agents. And I came across an image of a female law enforcement officer named Karen Bartuck from the Chicago Police Department. She was doing a photo shoot for 5/11, I think. And she had on their duty pants, duty shirt, trainer belt, sidearm was holstered. She had a two-way radio in her hand and sunglasses on, and short blonde hair. And I was like, hey, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Because a lot of the artwork that we see of Covergirl, she has blonde hair. But in the military, women either have their hair pinned up or they have it chopped off. And Karen had hers pinned up, if I'm not mistaken. But it was still a really good reference photo to use to base the figure off of. So I went out to an area Walmart, picked up another Lady Jaye, popped the head sculpt off, and started searching online for a 6-inch female figure with the head sculpt that I was looking for. And I just couldn't find one. And I remember that I had a Walgreens exclusive Emma Frost that included 2 head sculpts, and one of them had short blonde hair. So I got the figure out, opened up the box, popped the head sculpt on the body to see if it was, you know, going to fit the neck joint and things like that. and it worked. The problem is the hair on the head sculpt was down by the jawline, and I knew that was too long. You know, it just didn't sit well with me because it wasn't realistic, and it's not something that you would see in the military. So I popped the head sculpt back off and got out my X-Acto and just began cutting off sections of her hair until I got below her ear right here. And I pulled it out, and I just kind of cut up and over her ear and pulled that section out. And the reason I did that is because, you know, a lot of the girls that you see in the special operations community, when they cut their hair short like that, they will pull their hair behind their ear. And I was like, you know, I wanted it to look realistic, and that's why I did it. The other thing I did was I tried to angle the back of her hair to look like it had really been cut that way. And what I wound up doing the first time I cut it, it was lopsided. You know, it wasn't even, it wasn't how I wanted it to look. And I wound up cutting it again to match her neckline, and it come out a little bit better, and you know, it's good enough for me. So after I did that, I used some of the apple barrel black, and I dry brushed that into her scalp as well as on her hairline to kind of give it some depth and texture. And I took a Q-tip and dipped it in 70% isopropyl alcohol and wiped off the excess. And I went back with the apple barrel brown oxide and dry brushed that in as well, and wiped it down. And really, I wanted it to look realistic, but I also wanted to tone down the bright yellow plastic of the hair. The next thing that I did was I painted in the whites of her eyes. That wasn't there on that head sculpt before. So on the uniform, on the torso and on the abdomen, if you look at Lady Jaye, these sections look molded as if they're supposed to be some type of light body armor. And I wanted it to look different. And I went through several different attempts at repainting this. I finally settled on using brown. So the torso and abdomen there are painted brown oxide, as well as the stretch panels on her combat pants. I used a black on the knee pads. I repainted the boots in the brown oxide and the shin armor in black. And I did some of the details on the boots, like right there, to clasp for the shin armor. I did that in black as well. And on the back of the pants, you can see I did that in the brown oxide. The side of her shirt, I did that in brown oxide where the stretch panel is, and under her arms on the sleeve. I also went back over and dry brushed black over the entire body except for her arms and of course her exposed chest and neckline to just kind of give the uniform a dirty and weathered appearance. And I used some apple barrel classic caramel, which is sort of a close approximation to coyote brown, and I dry brushed that in different places, her pant seams and things like that to make it look dirty. The other thing I did was I changed her gun belt. I wanted to give her a holster and a sidearm because that's realistic, and I didn't have one to use. So what I did was I cut off one of the holsters from the Target exclusive Cobra Trooper, and I cut off this pouch that was here on the side of the belt, and I glued the holster on there. And I had a little issue where the front of the holster came loose, and when I re-glued it, some of the glue dried, and that's why it looks the way it does. But I just painted over it with brown oxide. And for the sidearm, I dry brushed it in gunmetal. I gave her Lady Jaye's dagger that was included, and I re-glued that pouch here. I also gave her Lady Jaye's backpack. I just cut off that camera that was there. For a primary weapon, I ended up giving her the Kriss Vector from the Action Force prototype weapons pack. I think that worked out really well. I also wanted to give her a disguise to wear out in public. You know, if she's, you know, conducting intelligence on the streets of Kandahar or Kabul, Afghanistan, or in another Middle Eastern country. I wanted her to have a shamag, which is a traditional face covering. So I made her two different ones. This one is just a piece of soft material that's been cut in a half triangle, and I just rolled it up like this, really to cover the front of her chest, where she could pull it up over her face. And the way that I previously did this is I just crossed them in the back, and I used one of my paint brushes to pull that chest strap out, and I just wound up tucking the cloth into this chest strap. Let's see if I can get it to go in. It's hard to get it up under there because it's kind of tight. There we go. And I pulled it above like this so that I could still attach the pack like that. And you can go back, you know, and pull it so that it's positioned however you want it to be over her chest. I also made for her a burqa, which is the traditional full body covering that you see women wearing in Afghanistan. So I wanted her to have, you know, a disguise if she's out on the streets. And the head covering is generally part of this, but and there's a certain way that they're worn, there we go, in real life. And that's what I wanted her to look like. So you can give her that, and then give her the Kriss Vector. And Covergirl is ready to go. So guys, there's my G.I Joe Classified Series Covergirl action figure. I hope you liked the video. I enjoyed this project more than any other project that I've worked on. You know, I've worked on a lot of custom projects over the last 6 years. Some of them took over 100 hours to complete in several weeks. And I didn't have as much fun on those as I did working on this. This is by far my favorite custom that I've ever done. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. Stay tuned, there's more to come.